Hi, everybody. My name is John Holer. I was the head of food hygiene at Camden BRI for over 25 years, before then moving to be technical director of Holchem, which is now Cursia for over 10 years. After retirement, I'm now doing a little bit of consulting and helping Cursia developing the pioneering Food Safety Association. And I'm also an honorary professor in food safety and hygienic design at Cardiff Met. I think I'm probably unusual being now as one of the few members who first attended the EHEDG at the first meeting in 1989. And I've been involved in the hygienic design of buildings and equipment since that time, probably now several hundred food factories. I also act as the chair of the Buildings Working Group.
Hi everyone, my name is Simon Burns. I've had 27 years in industry, both in technical and operational based roles. I'm currently working with 0 to 5, which is the Food Industry Centre at Cardiff Metropolitan University. I've been with the team for about 3 years now. I am the hygienic design lead at 0 to 5, offering support to Welsh food and drink companies. Previously had quite a bit of experience involved in factory setups, refits, installations, reinstallations and modification projects, and work with currently with 0 to 5 working with some businesses, offering support to include knowledge transfer around factory hygiene and design and modification controls.
Over the years, I think industry has realized that there are dangers associated with building work in food factories and the installation of equipment in food factories. There have been many cases in the UK, particularly within our chilled food industry, of listeria contamination following building work, where listeria has been disturbed by the building work and has found its way into the food product in dust and water. And occasions like that are also quite common in the USA and various other parts of Europe. GFSI recognized this as part of their hygienic design working group and suggested that food manufacturers should undertake a risk assessment prior to doing this building work or equipment installation if food production activities were taking place at the same time. That was then subsequently published in scopes J1 and J2 of their 2020 benchmark standard. And part of our role within the EHEDG Buildings Design Working Group has been to try and take part of that scope and provide guidance documents around it. So this really is a very good novel guidance document that I hope will have broad significance to the food industry and also to the EHEDG, because many of the EHEDG guidelines are about equipment design or process line design, all of which need to be installed in a food factory. So it was suggested at the beginning when we started to review guidance document 44 that a separate guidance document should be developed to allow guidance to be produced on undertaking building work and installing process equipment into areas. And Simon will talk in much greater detail about how a working group undertook that task and the guidance document that was published.
So the main challenge we initially had was defining the actual scope of the work that we'd be undertaking and what we would be including in this guideline document. I think the group quickly realised that the main focus of the work would be around building work or installations that are being carried out whilst live food production was still taking place, purely because of the enhanced degree of controls that would need to be in place in order to maintain food safety. Our group was quite small, and we all had different backgrounds, both academic as well as working in industry and different areas as well. But I think that actually turned around to be an advantage for us. Although we were quite small, the team was quite multidisciplined, so different disciplines within the food industry. And that gave different perspectives on the various risks which could be present, and also experience of actual scenarios as well as some theoretical scenarios as well. So yeah. So initially, we looked at what kind of scenarios we would be facing in quite general terms. So we obviously realised there was that there was probably three key areas or scenarios that this would apply to, and that would be, first of all, a brand new build from scratch, the repurposing of a site, so a facility was used either for food production previously or was used for non-food production and what was involved in that, and then also actual building works taking place on an active site where production was still carrying on. So then we considered the hazards as well as also looking at quality related issues. So we looked at things like physical hazards, so building materials, builders' tools, metal, plastics, etc. We also considered biological hazards, so as well as microbiological hazards and organisms. We also considered things like pests and chemical hazards as well. So looking at things like allergens, cross-contact of allergens, lubricants, service treatment, resins. But also we also considered other issues such as odour transfer, which could be a quality issue as well. We then looked at the possible sources of where these hazards could arise from. So, for example, environmental, with direct exposure to the outside. So if we're knocking down walls and knocking down the exterior of the factory, open doors, then obviously the food production area would be exposed to external factors as well. We also considered hazards embedded with the current building. So for example, contaminated sandwich panels, what would happen if we disrupted drains, etc. We then looked at the hazards that perhaps the construction team could introduce, both in terms of their personal hygiene, contamination from the tools that they're using, if they've used in another factory or not in a food factory, and then what would they be bringing in, so decontamination methods around that, as well as also controlling how the construction team would enter and exit food production facilities. We also looked at waste, because obviously some building work would inevitably produce some waste, and how we would control the removal of that so it wouldn't contaminate production areas. But also then we considered the actual contamination that might come from the building work itself. We considered methods that we could use to control the hazards. For example, pest control management, segregation methods, so installing screening and barriers. And finally, we produced an example of a building work risk assessment as well, to give some insight into what kind of control measures might be put into place, but also how you document that you are managing the building work as well going forward. I think communication is vitally important. As John mentioned in his outset, J1 and J2, so producing things like a user requirement specification, so that the contractor knows what's expected, and then there's a conversation around what can and can't be done, what controls would need to be in place, and also obviously the training of the construction workers, as previously mentioned. As with most things, multidisciplinary team, very important to have input from various interested stakeholders within the business, but also perhaps the architects if it was a building work, the OEM if you were installing a piece of machine, and other contractors as well. Again, to see what can be achieved and what can't be achieved and what needs to be mitigated against, etc. A good risk assessment is vital, so all things are considered and controls are considered as well to reduce the likelihood of a risk hazard, entering the food product. If there was an opportunity, for example, to build up a stock line, so you could allow a week of no production. If you had a sister factory, you could outsource the production to. Or if it was part of the process, could you outsource that part of the process as well? And what kind of controls would you need to put in place for that? If the production needs to carry on, a quick review of your prerequisite programs, and if they're not enough, do we need to consider new prerequisite programs, and also records, training, etc. around those. Also, there might be some operational changes you might need to consider. So do you need additional storage, for example? And also, do we need to stop production during certain times? A good documentation review, and review that regularly, because as the processes might change to allow for building work, documentation might need to be changed. There might be, for example, an enhanced environmental swabbing regime, so obviously documentation would need to be changed to reflect that. And then at the end of the project, probably vitally important, is a review of the project and a discussion around what went really well, what probably didn't go quite so well, and how could that potentially be changed for next time.